that has dropped. It's in committee and it just got voted out of committee. And it is Senate Bill 71, which would limit absentee voting, which is no excuse absentee voting, to only people who are over the age of 75, who have a disability and are out of town. And that bill passed this morning 3-2 on party lines and will now advance to the full ethics committee. So it was in subcommittee, and now it's going to go to the full ethics committee in the Senate. And the reason why bills like this are important is because right now there are currently 41 bills that want to address voting in Georgia. They are bills that want to take us back to a less inclusive Georgia with regard to voting. And we saw, again, unprecedented voter turnout with the drop boxes, with the no excuse absentee voting. We saw Georgia vote at a rate that it hadn't voted before. And of course, we have to expect that the losing side is going to push back, when we should all want everyone to be a part of our representative democracy. And that's why it's important that we watch out for these bills and we make sure that we are aware of what's happening. And so what I'm going to do in this post, in the comments, I'm going to drop the names of all of the individuals that you need to contact in the ethics committee to vote this bill down, because we have to continue to be a part of the electoral process, which also means holding our elected officials accountable when they do something outside the will of the people. I didn't hear a lot of Georgians complaining about the ability to vote. If anything, they were complaining that their ability to vote was being restricted because of the lack of access. And so this would mean more lack of accesses. And again, it went on a party line vote, 3-2, mainly the Republicans voting to restrict at-will absentee voting. And this is just the beginning of these type of tactics. And so we have to be aware. You're going to see information on Facebook. You're going to see information on Twitter and on YouTube, and of course in mainstream media. But we need to be aware and do a deep dive into what's actually happening. And so again, the Senate subcommittee voted 3-2 along party lines to approve the bills, which will now advance to the full ethics committee. Georgia law has allowed any registered voter to cast an absentee ballot since 2005. So this is the rules they put in effect. But Senate Bill 71 would limit absentee voting to only people who are over 75 and have a physical disability or are out of town. So again, you got to ask yourself, which voters is that benefiting? What's the problem with allowing individuals to be able to vote no excuse, especially in the middle of a pandemic? The Democrats said the bill would stop people from voting from home if they're worried about their health, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. And so now you got to choose whether to get coronavirus and vote, or vote from the comfort of your own home while you're protecting yourself. These are just some of the bills. And again, I have an extensive list on a flyer that I will put in the comments so you can see. And I will also put in the comments all of the individuals that you need to contact to make sure that this bill does not get out of committee, because it goes to subcommittee, then committee, then to the full floor of the Senate. And if it passes the full floor, then it goes over to the House. And if the House passes it, it goes to the governor's desk to be signed into law. So this is how you prevent a bill from becoming a law and then becoming a more repressive law that will affect your voting rights. And this is why politics is always local. There was also another bill that was introduced yesterday by the governor with regard to the citizens arrest statute. And, you know, I was concerned yet optimistic about the bill. But again, I always want to get to the meat of the bill and read it for myself. And so one of my friends in the House sent me the bill. And so there are already two bills in the House and in the Senate that will fully repeal citizens arrest. What the governor is doing is adding some exceptions to the full repeal of citizens arrest. So here's the bill, and it has not been titled yet, but it's LC 412942, and it's to amend Title 17 Official Code of Georgia relating to criminal procedure so as to revise, not repeal, revise certain arrest powers to provide for arrest by law enforcement officers outside the jurisdiction of his or her employing law enforcement agency under certain circumstances, and to revise the grounds for the arrest by a private person to repeal it in its entirety under Article 4. So there will be carved out some exceptions. So let's talk about the exceptions. It redefines 17-420, which is the arrest statute. An arrest for a crime may be made by a law enforcement officer under a warrant or without a warrant if the offense is committed in such person's presence or within such person's immediate knowledge. And so this is where I have a slight problem with this. You know, I want the full repeal of citizen's arrest because of the killing of our dear brother Ahmaud and the call from his mother and his father to repeal citizen's arrest. But I want a clean bill, and I want it fully repealed. And my issue here is Georgia already has sufficient powers to allow a law enforcement officer to make an arrest. It's under the arrest statute. It says here, and this is already Georgia law, an arrest for a crime may be made by a law enforcement officer under a warrant or without a warrant if the offense is committed in the officer's presence or within such officer's immediate knowledge. Now, the governor yesterday went on television and said that officers cannot arrest outside of their jurisdiction. That is somewhat so. The law under 17-420 says an arrest for a crime may be made by a law enforcement officer under a warrant or without a warrant if the offense is committed in the officer's presence or within the officer's immediate knowledge. There is no jurisdictional requirement in this part of the law. Now, the Georgia Supreme Court has clarified an additional statute which talks about traffic citations where there is a geographical requirement under that case law, and that case came out in 2016. It was dealing with a DUI traffic stop, and the Supreme Court said that officers are restrained from their jurisdictional boundaries for making an arrest on a traffic citation. But I would argue that under 17-420, an officer who witnesses a crime or has sufficient immediate knowledge of a crime can arrest anywhere in the state. That's why they're certified Georgia peace officers. They can make arrests throughout the state as long as they satisfy 17-420. So I don't understand why there needs to be a amendment to the law, which is part 2 of this, which is what the governor is asking for. A law enforcement officer may make outside of the jurisdiction of the law enforcement officer agency by which he is employed. Why do we need that? If the earlier law, which is already good law, says that if there's an incident that happens in his immediate presence or within his immediate knowledge, he can make an arrest, or he or she can make an arrest. Also, there's the hot pursuit doctrine, which means if the offense occurred in that jurisdiction, they can follow that person to another jurisdiction and make the arrest and then turn them over to the other jurisdiction. So I think these are distinctions without a difference that don't need to go into this law. Then they carve out the shopkeeper's exception. So wait a minute now. We're trying to prevent what happened to our dear brother Ahmaud. But what happens if a shopkeeper or store owner decides they want to use deadly force and kill somebody in exercising a citizen's arrest? So it defines a food establishment, it defines law enforcement unit and the owner, it defines retail establishments, and it says a private person may detain an individual if such private person is the owner of a retail establishment who has reasonable grounds. What is reasonable? That's going to have to be defined. Reasonable grounds to believe that individual sought to be detained has committed or attempted to commit an offense of theft by shoplifting, and it sets out the shoplifting